Hi, it's Mike Robinson.
Hello, Mike. Good morning.
How are you? That was a journey.
I think we have some people joining in, but we're starting in 12 minutes.
Great. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Max.
Victoria. Michaela, I see you, but I don't see Duncan.
Duncan is not on yet. We have Michael, you, me, and Michelle.
I will ping Duncan right now. I had a little bit of an issue logging in, so he might as well have an issue logging in. So let me ping him right now.
Okay, I see Duncan joined.
Excellent. Good morning, Duncan.
Duncan, can you hear us? I think you're still on mute.
Okay.
Hi, Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
How
Hello.
are you?
Okay, yeah, we have 5 minutes to start, but it's good to see that all the panelists were able to join.
Everybody seems to be coming well. The strength of voice and connection is good, Max.
Yeah, looks like it.
The recording will start in 5 minutes, right?
I think it already automatically started for many of us, but yes, Nazar will join us and he will start his recording as well.
Okay.
We'll edit the final recording, of course, to skip the preparation time.
Mm-hmm. And we have attendees joining as well. Nice to see the uptick. The ideal digital transformation partner for the enterprises in the midst of digital transformation that are building out new digital services and retooling their IT operations to be more agile and product-centric. I'm Victoria Lifshitz, the founder and executive vice president of customer success at Grid Dynamics. We are the company that's been singularly focused on digital transformation services since our inception 14 years ago. Delivering digital transformation requires new kind of relationship between the customer and the vendor. In order to create innovation continuously and on a sustainable basis, companies must rethink the role vendors play in software delivery and the value they provide. You cannot outsource innovation to the third party, and you cannot effectively use resources that are simply order takers. The term that is increasingly used in the industry is agile co-creation. And that means that the customer and vendor are working together in new and creative ways. Vendors are expected to bring deep technology, process, and culture expertise and share that expertise with the customer to facilitate knowledge transfer. Both parties participate in the design, architecture, and roadmap planning, with vendors offering proven architectural blueprints and best practices to accelerate time to market. For CTOs and CIOs and their business counterparts in the CEOs, COOs, and marketing chiefs, the KPIs for success and measure of value is less about cost savings and dollar per hour rates, and more about winning bigger market share, increasing customer conversions, exploiting deeper insights, and getting to market quicker. This webinar will discuss the best practices on how to make digital transformation easier and more successful by selecting the right technology vendor and implementing this agile co-creation engagement model. To do that, we brought together 3 different perspectives: that of an analyst, service provider, and customer, all with distinguished track record in driving, supporting, and facilitating digital transformation at large scale. So let me now introduce our panelists. First is Duncan Jones, who is a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester and leading expert on business application strategies and how to get the most from strategic software partners. Last year, he published Forrester Wave Report, or Midsize Agile Software Development Service Providers. Duncan will explain the problems with traditional technology vendor procurement and outsourcing, and share his views on the best practices for vendor selection, engagement, and delivery management that will enable agile adoption and digital transformation. Then, Max Martinov, who is a Chief Technology Officer at Grid Dynamics, where he is responsible for the creation of services and competencies to help customers define and execute digital transformation technology strategy, will outline 5 factors that make Grid Dynamics a successful practitioner of agile co-creation, and incidentally, a leader in the Forrester Wave Report that I've mentioned earlier. Max is the author of the book, Continuous Delivery Blueprint, Software Change Management for Enterprise in the Era of Cloud, Microservices, DevOps, and Automation. He'll share some of the best practices that make his company an effective innovation partner for digital enterprises. And finally, Mike Robinson is a career executive in digital retail and a former executive vice president of Macy's.com, where he and his team was responsible for 10x growth in revenue through digital channels. Today, Mike works with many startups and corporate boards, and he'll share his experience in taking large organizations through cultural change needed to become a leader in digital services. After their presentations, we'll take questions. Please submit them through the webinar portal as we go along. Duncan, please take this away.
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me here to talk about this topic, which is very important to me. I've been studying the outsourcing of development for quite a while now, and hopefully have some interesting insights to share with you. Hopefully Victoria and others, you can still see my screen and my picture here.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this image here is a way of describing the shift in the software development industry over the last few years. For many years, we've had this sort of paint by numbers approach where the customer knows what they want or thinks they know what they want, and they give a very precise specification to their vendors, and they get them all to bid on it, and they pick whichever is the lowest bid, which is usually the bid that from the vendor that's most underestimated what it'll actually cost to deliver what the customer really needs. And that's the typical waterfall and fixed bid approach. But now it's much more like this art side on the bottom right here, where the specification is a little bit vaguer. Maybe the client doesn't really know what they want. They give a vague commission about, well, I want this work of art, and I want all the local burgers to be depicted in the picture, but the details are up to you, and I want you to work with me, and I'll come and watch how you work, and maybe halfway through refine the design a little bit. And that's what the Agile is all about. So think of it in terms of the shift from paint by numbers to artistic creation, the co-creation that Victoria talked about. So there's really 3 things I'm going to be talking about, is how Agile is really driving this change in software development in order to better meet customers' and internal users' needs, how specialist service providers can accelerate your transformation towards Agile, and then how to choose the right partner for this journey. Now we're seeing across knowledge services categories a shift amongst the most mature of our clients to be focused much more on the things that matter to their organization's customers. And by that, I mean the external customers, not the internal colleagues that we often call as customers. 10 years ago, the shift was very much about cost reduction. There was a trend towards offshoring to find cheaper people. It was labor arbitrage. It was all about low day rates, consolidating with fewer vendors, squeezing margins. It started to shift a little bit towards value, service level agreements, and quality. The next shift has to be towards getting more innovation from your vendors, moving faster, getting more reliable services, and certainly improving the overall experience, some of the softer side of dealing with a service provider. And I've got an example here from the financial services industry. Don't panic, this is not another graph of COVID cases. This is from the organization which looked at the physical bank branch closures over a 5-year period. It's not news to anybody that bank branches are closing, and there are many other industries which are moving from bricks and mortar online, accelerated by recent events. The point of showing this slide is, as part of this shift, you would think that the banks would be doing a great job of creating alternatives such as mobile applications. But when Forrester studies and evaluates the mobile banking apps produced by this in this industry, we find that actually very large numbers of them, despite spending billions collectively in developing these applications, they actually rate relatively poorly compared with the best in their industry. Something's going wrong here in the development process. And why is that? Well, it's partly because the old waterfall process just doesn't work in an area that's so fast moving like mobile apps development. You can come up with that paint by number specification and tell the service provider exactly what the app's got to look like. And then the technology changes, customers' expectations change. So maybe you've developed a simpler way of entering your user ID and your password, and then some other people have actually put in facial recognition or fingerprint recognition that totally undermines your differentiation. Excuse me, just a problem with Zoom here. Now, if I go back to that slide, I'll just point out here, one of the banks, BBVA, which has been a leader in our evaluation for 3 or 4 years running. It's no surprise that they have shifted very substantially to agile development. This is some of the information from their website about why and how they made that transformation. It enables them to react much quickly to changes in the market, to changes in technology. They can learn how customers are using their app and changing it. This is a picture of one of their development and design sessions that we remember with some nostalgia now that we can't actually meet face to face like this. But people are replicating that sort of situation in online forums. The agile process is still going ahead, and it requires this fundamental shift in approach that the individuals recognize that they don't know what the great app should look like. They get together to share ideas, and they work with their service providers to feed into that process some ideas of maybe what's possible with technology. And together they come up with the better design of what it's going to look like. But they don't leave it there and cast it in stone. They actually start the process, but are ready. Something new comes in, like facial recognition or voice understanding, they'll build that in to the product. What's more, once they've released the app into the field, they include monitoring in it so that they can see how people are using it. They can spot where there is a problem, where people are abandoning transactions, or where they seem to be liking the software. Maybe they'll survey them directly, or maybe they just track by the usage and know when people are happy and when they're not. And then, of course, they've got to iterate quickly. They've got to fix those problems as soon as they spot them. And that means they've got to automate the testing and the development and then deployment so that they can get that fix out into the app as quickly as possible. Users' tolerance for problems is much less. We're not going to sit there and say, okay, the first version isn't perfect. I'll just wait for 3 months and the next version will be much better. No, we're expecting it to be fixed in days or weeks. And you've got to be able to accommodate that, which means quite substantial changes to the way you develop and then push that code into deployment. And there's got to be this culture of innovating continually and relentlessly. The whole team has got to be empowered to suggest ideas, to push back against suggestions that they don't think are right, to contribute to the design process, to suggest new ways of solving the user's problems. That's very much a team effort. And where you're working with a service provider, you need a service provider who will do that, who will be confident enough to tell you when they think you're misguided. Is better. Unfortunately, from our data, we see that the progress in the market is not as great as it should be, and not as great as maybe people think. When we ask, for example, infrastructure decision makers whether their firm has adopted Agile, 67% of them say, yes, we have. But then when we get into some of the detail about how quickly they release software into the market, or what the developers think about the level of Agile adoption, it's very much lower than maybe what the infrastructure people think. And even when we talk to the developers and say, are you using Agile development? Of course, they say, yes, there are several flavors of Agile development. But when we get into the detail about, okay, what are you measuring in terms of success? We see that they haven't really bought into the Agile concept fully. Now, why would we use service providers in this context? Well, according to our data from our survey of services decision makers, it's really about speed now rather than only about cost saving. We found that service providers can ramp up resources quickly. They have access to skills, knowledge of technology that maybe the clients don't have internally. They can bring this external perspective to challenge thinking, to push back on requirements that aren't really well thought out. And then they've got established best practices that can accelerate the transformation process. There are a few problems, maybe not universal, but some very common problems that we hear from the clients about service providers that the engagements clearly aren't perfect. So a lot depends on choosing the right provider and then engaging with them in the right way so that you get the benefits from the previous slide without getting the problems that are on this slide. In our view, that depends primarily on choosing someone who is going to be a true strategic partner. It's a very much overused term, and it's a good idea actually to sit down and think to yourself, what do we mean when we talk about partners? What are we expecting from our partners? I've studied this topic for many years here at Forrester, and I found that in strong partnerships where both parties are happy with the relationship, these three key qualities tend to exist. That it's built on trust, that the partner delivers innovation that helps the client get ahead of its competitors, and that there's a focus on success. When there's a problem, both parties get together and say, okay, what's the right thing to do? Not what's going to give me the short-term commercial benefit, but what's the right thing to do for the client. I think it's a good idea to assess these qualities and others that you think that you need from a partner. And that will help you identify who are really the partners, and who are the ones in name only, where they're not really willing or able to live up to the standards shown in this picture. And the good ones, you reward them by expanding the relationship, giving them more business. There's a soft contract that you work with them over and over again over a period of years. The best service providers in the software development industry have many clients who they've been working for 5, 8, 10 years or more, because they do a good job and exhibit these qualities of trust on success. So that's, in summary, the qualities that I looked for when I was doing this wave into mid-size agile software development service providers that Victoria mentioned. The reason I looked at mid-size providers is because very often our clients have established relationships already with the bigger firms, but those bigger firms aren't necessarily the best choice always for some of these software co-creation projects. So if you have an established partnership with a big firm, great, consider them, but it's a good idea to look beyond the usual suspects and go into the specialist area where there's maybe a more commitment to your success. Saw a big difference in the maturity level of the client. There were some who were very much new to agile methods, and they wanted a lot of knowledge transfer and help getting started in implementing frameworks like DevOps. And so I think it's a good idea when you're selecting a partner to assess your own maturity and be realistic. Recognize if you do have a lot further to go, that maybe you need to select a partner that's very good at the knowledge transfer, that has some prescriptive methods about how you put in the relevant tool sets. If you're a little bit further along the curve, then you should be looking for a partner who can actually help you go faster, maybe establish methodologies for measuring quality and velocity in an automated way. And also for comparing the performance of the outsourced teams with the internal teams in an objective way, so that everybody can see that the agile teams are outperforming the waterfall teams, or that the which of the internal teams are actually improving and catching up with their the best from the service providers. Before you do the selection, I would just also say, it depends whether you're looking for really innovative software that is going to be ahead of the competition, or whether you're just looking to catch up quickly. 80% of the banks in my previous picture would be well advised to just look to catch up rather than try and leap ahead of the ones who are leaders now and have been leaders for years. Okay, well, that all is well and good, but what happens when you actually come to create a contract with the service provider? Well, this is a quote from a client that I was speaking to who listened to my presentation and then said, well, yeah, but what about value for money? It's a really difficult question to answer, because if your idea of value for money is getting 40 hours of work because you're paying for 40 hours and then hoping that your day rate is lower than what your competitors are charging, then you're really fundamentally missing the point of what the software is supposed to do, the value that you're going to get from the software. And actually, if the service provider spends 36 hours designing the software in their mind and 4 hours actually coding it, or maybe even if they do the whole thing in 8 hours, reusing code that they've developed previously, why do you care if the value of the software is proven, if it does what you need it to do, if it does what your customers need it to do? So I think this fundamental rethinking of what value means is core to the transformation into Agile. Contract that defines success differently and includes in the contract the things that you will measure that will represent success, whether it's real business benefit, like an uplift in sales that's recognizable, or whether it's metrics that you hope will lead to financial gain, like increased adoption of the app by users or higher customer satisfaction scores after they've been using the app. Those could be success measures of success. You build those into the contract. You reward your partner if they over-deliver on the project's goals. You have to accept that it's risky. We don't know what the great software is going to look like until we're further ahead in the process. It may take longer than we expected, may work faster than we've expected, but we can't expect the partner to underwrite all the risk that our minimum viable product isn't as close to the customer's needs as we hoped, or that the technology doesn't quite work how we expected. You have to measure and reward quality. We could talk much longer about what quality means and what speed means and how those are measured, but let's not get into the detail just yet. Let's just focus on that these are the key metrics. And if we're talking about effort and day rates and lines of code produced, we're really missing the point. Manage the internal outsourced teams similarly. You may even have merged teams that combine outsourced people with internal people. You've got to have the same sort of KPI, the same sort of measures, and you're measuring the team's performance more than the individuals. And it's underpinned by this soft contract that if the service provider and the teams that they provide are doing a good job, then you give them more work in future, increase the scope. The products that they're working on will be successful and will get further investment. That's the incentive for everybody to do a good job. But also the partner accepts that sometimes things don't go according to plan. You find out after a few of the sprints that things aren't working right. You've got to have the right to cancel that project and think again and hopefully re-engage that service provider a little bit later to work on something else. So in summary, use agile development specialists to accelerate your transformation, to take you up that maturity curve from the beginner to the advanced, but doing that while they're helping you co-create great software that gives you business value, that helps you catch up or even overtake your competitors. Create a partnership charter, the soft contract that defines how you're going to work together. That's more important than the hard contract because it lasts longer. And that will include how you're going to measure these qualities of trust, innovation, and focus on your success, and how you're going to work together to fix friction in the relationship before it gets terminal. Convince your procurement and finance colleagues that this is the way forward. And if they're skeptical, you've got to work out a way to persuade them to give it a chance, which they have some natural fears that it's a blank check, that there'll be scope creep and all the problems that they've experienced with waterfall projects. Well, there's no magic answer to that, but just explain how the agile process reduces that risk. And of course, compare the agile projects with the ones that you're doing on waterfall and see that they're performing better, that the quality is higher, that the development is faster, and that the business benefits are more. And so if you're defining and measuring success correctly, you can prove that the agile development is working, and that will hopefully allay their concerns. So hopefully that's a good run through, a lot of information there. Happy to take questions towards the end, but for now I'll pass it back to Max.
Yeah, thank you very much, Duncan. I want to encourage everybody to submit your questions. We'll try to take as many of them as we can towards the end. And now I'd like to pass the mic to Max.
Thank you, Victoria and Duncan. Give me a second and I will share my screen. Victoria, can you please confirm that you can see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, sounds good. So let me start with a couple of words about Grid Dynamics. Grid Dynamics is a professional services company, and we provide services in digital transformation for large enterprises in US and Europe. We focus on digital transformation for Fortune 500 companies. We have top talent across United States and Europe. And during the 14 years that we exist on the market, we delivered close to 1,000 products to our clients. And last year, like Victoria mentioned, we got into the leadership quadrant of the Forrester Midsize Agile Developers Report. And I would like to talk about what does it take to be a leader in agile code development and co-creation, and what makes us successful as a company. And I can summarize it in 5 elements that make us successful. And the first of these elements is the cross-functional teams, meaning that when we build a team or a pod, we want every skill that we need for successful and end-to-end delivery of the project to be in that team. What we also try to do is we try to get people from the company we work with in the same team, so that we do knowledge sharing during the actual delivery. Second aspect is the right approach to agile. Too many companies consider agile as a process that helps them to manage requirements, and it stops when developers stop writing code. But in reality, agile starts with experimentation and working with the actual customer, and ends when you deliver your software to production, and when you measure the impact of the software to the customer and to your KPIs that you defined for the project. So it's important to treat agile and implement it end-to-end, and not stop when the code is done by developers. And we use our continuous delivery expertise and DevOps culture and best practices to implement end-to-end agile. The third component is reusable expertise that we have in the form of blueprints and accelerators. And we heavily invest in R&D efforts to bring expertise to our clients when they don't have it yet, and reuse the expertise that we built from our engagements across industries and within the industry. That ultimately helps us to reduce time to market and deliver results faster for clients. The fourth and one of the most important ones is that we rely on the world-class engineering talent. You can have the best processes in the world and you can reuse products, but if you don't have great engineers, the progress in digital transformation will still be limited, and you will have challenges. Like I said, we have top engineering talent that we hire from the best locations with the best universities in Central and Eastern Europe, and that's something that truly differentiates us. And the last but not least is our knowledge on how to manage distributed delivery. And I will talk about it on the next slide, where I want to talk a little bit about the misconceptions and things that we think actually do not matter that much based on our experience in delivering over 1,000 products to our clients. The first one is that collaboration is not the same as collocation. Too many companies are focused on collocating their teams in one location to make sure that communication will just happen by itself and the right collaboration will happen by itself. But in reality, that is not always the case. And what matters most is the right culture, the right people, and the right processes and tools to reinforce that culture and to help people collaborate. And when you have the right culture and the right processes and the right people, you will have efficient collaboration and effective collaboration even when the team is not collocated, which is especially important in the current times when it's not, we're not even talking about collaboration, we're talking about completely remote teams that are distributed across the world and everyone is working from home. The second is that cross-functional teams is not the same as cross-functional engineers. And again, too many companies are focused on hiring unicorns that have expertise in every field and in every aspect of software delivery, from inception to architecture to development to deployment and testing and UI and backend. And in reality, we see that there should be a healthy balance. Engineers don't have to be experts in everything. It is very healthy and it's very good when the process in the team is set up in the right way, that engineers know what others are doing and they can backfill if needed and step up and do something else. But ultimately, what matters is a cross-functional team so that the team is self-sufficient, which doesn't necessarily mean that you will have experts in everything within that team. And with that in mind, I want to talk about a journey that we had with the Fortune 500 company in digital transformation, how we approached it, and talk a little bit about the results. We, in a true collaboration mode and in a true co-innovation, co-creation mode, we started working with a company on redesigning their digital platforms and creating architecture collaboratively between Grid Dynamics architects, bringing some of the industry best practices and experience, and the company architects who knew about the current company architecture the most. And with that, we were able to build the right microservices architecture that, that we were able to use to scale the engineering and the platform for the company later, and grow and scale the sales and be able to handle more traffic. And then the whole effort was split across a number of vendors. And the company gave some of the microservices to Grid Dynamics, some of the microservices for other vendors, and embedded their people in the teams to enable co-creation, co-innovation, and knowledge sharing. But after a while, we figured out that Grid Dynamics teams were performing better than the rest of the teams for the reasons that I just outlined in the previous slide. And what happened is we specifically understood that implementing of DevOps, continuous delivery, automation best practices, and knowing emerging technologies and how to use them properly to build the new platform is what makes us more productive and what makes us deliver more high quality software than other companies. So we engaged with the company to see how we can improve productivity and performance of other teams. And we selected a number of initiatives when we built foundational platforms for continuous delivery and processes that all other teams were able to use. We brought the DevOps culture to other teams and brought the right expertise to other teams by embedding the right people into these other teams. And this is what usually helps you to spread the culture within the organization and spread the right processes. We also implemented a number of knowledge sharing mechanisms by, again, embedding more people from the company to our teams so that they can be spread across other teams, and doing like we call technology days or innovation days meetups within the company to educate the company and other teams about what is happening in the industry, what we see, where the innovation is happening, and how we can improve the platform and the customer experience that we are building. And ultimately, we were able to build a very scalable and a very convenient platform for customers. The company who we worked with were ultimately able to grow their top line significantly by using that platform. And the ultimate success was that the customers liked the platform and voted with their dollars by spending money on that platform. When Duncan talked about how to measure success and how to incentivize the companies and how to build those trusted relationships, this is ultimately what is our incentive. Our incentive is to build products for companies so that these products are successful on the market, so that the business of the company sees that they need to invest more in this to get even more benefits from building these products, and that helps us to scale to scale our presence at the client and scale our company. And ultimately, it is a win-win scenario when everyone gets what they need to. Over the course of this digital transformation, we built a number of projects, a number of products. During the number of projects, some of them were more related to technology foundational products. Some of them were more business oriented. And you might ask yourself how a DevOps platform might help me grow top line, or how cloud platform or microservices platform might help me grow top line. But the reality is it does help to grow because DevOps platform decreases your time to market and you can release new features faster. And microservices platform helps you scale your engineering effort so that you can build more features over a period of time. And of course, other platforms, analytical data platform, machine learning platforms, they build the right foundation for you to take advantage of data and start using the data to better understand your customer and design a better platform and a better functionality for the customer. And ultimately, over the course of this engagement, we were able to achieve quite a good business results, which included the growth of revenue on the digital platform up to billions of dollars annually. We were able to decrease time to release features from months to hours by building this DevOps platform. And one of the important things is we were able to scale the technology organization, because with more demand from customers in innovation, with more demand from business in innovation, one of the key things that technology organizations need to do is to understand how they can scale themselves and stay productive at the same time to deliver more value over a period of time. That is everything that I want to talk about. Victoria, back to you.
Great, Max. Thank you so much. Let me pass the mic to Mike.
All right. Let's see. Is my screen sharing?
Yes.
Great. Let me get it full size. All right. Thank you, everyone. Just want to spend a few minutes coming at it from the last perspective that Victoria mentioned, from a customer perspective. And I always like to start this with just an understanding of how I enter into this dialogue. I've been a veteran in the digital transformation, especially in the retail industry space, over the last 2 decades. And have really focused on that from 2 angles. I've been on the sell side in terms of selling services, and I've been on the buy side in terms of buying services from 2 different directions. As mentioned, I've got background at a couple of large retailers, Gap and Macy's, during that time. And then currently, I'm spending time focused on bringing that perspective to startups from a board perspective, and also have been involved in my own startup as well. But the bottom line here is that throughout this entire journey over the last 20 years, is I've always tried to figure out what is the strategic value of really thoughtful technology investments, and then how do you find the right partners to be able to bring those to life. Now, this is a career that is riddled with plenty of mistakes, but I want to talk about on the next page a little bit more about that journey, and then something that was successful. Over this time, if you focus on the graphic on the right, I really was an all or nothing type of individual. It was, if I'm going to have accountability, I have to own it, right? And I have to do it. And the only way that I can adjust that is use staff augmentation to really bring a closure to a skills gap or a closure to a demand gap. And that led to sub-optimized solutions. The other option was, well, I'm going to put all the accountability on someone else and outsource, and then structure these agreements to be something that is much more around protection, and it's usually protection of both sides, rather than co-creating. And it really, again, led to suboptimal solutions. And I never really fully optimized, in either of those, if you go to either end of that spectrum. But then we had some moments where we would create a hybrid model. and we would structure the problem differently, and we'd structure the conversation differently, we'd structure the team differently, and ultimately the output was much different. An example of that was, that there was a time in my recent past where we were challenged by the company's board to grow much faster from a digital perspective and try to take advantage of market dynamics, but also take advantage of the fact that there was going to be significantly more investment driven into this channel. And one of the things that we started to look at was just kind of our core technologies. And one of the things we settled on that we wanted to do something different around was search. And search is, much more than just, typing in some search terms to be able to find a product on a website. It drives your merchandising strategy, it drives your promotion strategy. And ultimately, as we, carried this forward over several years, it created different metaphors in terms of what we did from a search perspective. And it was interesting because, periodically I had to meet with the board and I had to talk to them about how we were changing our investment approach. And when I told them that we were going after search, and those that were savvy enough to understand the impact of that thought it was, that why did I think that this was the right time? Wasn't there a third party out there that had a solution? What gave us the confidence that we thought that we could go build something on our own? I said it was just the right time. It was you were asking us to go faster. There really isn't a compelling third party. It was a rallying cry for our employees who were saying, I want to do something different. I want to own this, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we've got the right partner ecosystem in place. And we were doing work with Grid Dynamics at this point, and one of the terms that I used with our board is I said, look, we have a partner group that is literal rocket scientists. And this gives us confidence that if we put the right people in the room at the same time to co-create, that they can come up with something much better than either what the market is making available to us or what we might define on our own. And the breakthroughs that came out of this were long-reaching. Again, it was a strategic investment that helped fuel our growth for years to come after that. But it also shifted certain things internally, and it caused us to start thinking about everything that we were doing to take a product mindset to it. How could we build a product and improve upon a product and extend a product? And that happened across the entire stack of what we were doing. It also pushed us to really, really aggressively lean in to Agile and then ultimately Lean as we went even more aggressive on this. And it expanded the amount of experimentation that we did as well. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that it caused us to blur the lines in terms of our organization. I've told this story a million times, and I'll tell it once more. I would be in meetings or I'd be walking down the hall, and I could not tell who was an employee and who was a partner, and that was great, right? That was exactly what needed to happen, because that blurring of the lines increased the level of creativity associated with what we were attempting to do. And at the end, it truly, truly sparked our appetite to be more innovative. And it caused people to start saying, well, I've got an idea, or I've got an idea, and I want to partner with this person, and I want to try something here. And we actually created an innovation cycle that we had people from both our company and partners participating. The point is that those experiences, coupled with the experiences that I had previously, caused me to think about how I evaluate partners differently. And I think it's a decision as leaders that we always need to never ever take lightly. I think Duncan did a great job talking about it's no longer a commodity business. I mean, you can go that route, but you will get what you pay for. And you have to find people and partners that actually help you drive, those three core tenets of, building trust and driving innovation and focusing on your success. And I tend to think of it in this notion of how do you evaluate the potential for value creation versus what might be a perceived known cost. I'm always looking for value, right? And if somebody says, well, I can do that for $100,000, I'm pretty sure they can't do the best job that we might be able to if we open the aperture a little bit more. In addition, I'm looking to evaluate mindset over muscle memory, right? And what I'm looking for is someone that says, let's start taking apart the problem. Let's start putting ideas into place. Let's see where that may take us. And then let's see where we go from there, versus here's how we did it the last 3 times. And here's a recipe in terms of, I think those are great fodder for involvement and incorporation, but they shouldn't be the only answer you're looking for. And I think, again, back to Duncan's, points, but also my own personal points is, I believe that this is a model, especially if you really think about the words of agile co-innovation, that you can create this notion of shared accountability. You can, you can look at it and say, and my definition of shared accountability was, if we both succeed, there will be more opportunity for you going forward. If we don't succeed, there won't be. It was as binary as that. And that drives that notion of success, which ultimately builds trust. And so when you find yourselves in those really, really difficult times where things may not be going as well as you'd like them to, you can look to the left and to the right and realize that you've got trusted partners that you can continue to move forward with. So Victoria, I'll pause it there and hand it back to you.
Great, Mike, thank you very much. So we've heard these 3, different but coherent perspectives on what it means to become agile, product-centric, bring products that customers love to market, from the analyst angle and the service delivery company and the customer. And what I'd like to do now is open up floor for questions. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your webinar software. Please submit questions that you have. And I will begin by asking, some questions that I have high on my mind. And let me begin with this. And it's a question for all 3 panelists, but maybe we could start with Duncan. And that is, a lot of what's discussed today are very soft matters. And I think both Mike and Duncan refer to that as such. Things like speed, things like collaborativeness, knowledge sharing, they are much harder to measure when it comes to vendor productivity. Something like price per hour, traditional metrics, is a lot easier. And I often find in speaking to COs or CFOs or chiefs of VMO is that they're saying, well, we don't know how to measure these soft things, so we're going to do what's easy, which is whichever supplier offers, the least dollar per hour for, let's say, big data engineer or Java engineer. That is something that we understand and we know how to put, numbers around in comparison. But, as we discussed today, that's really not a great metrics. So talk a little bit about how do you suggest to overcome that challenge?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Victoria. There's it's very tempting to measure what's easy to measure rather than what's actually important. And some of these things are subjective. So you do have to measure them subjectively. You measure your own experience of working with the vendors, people across different representatives, and then hopefully talk to reference customers of those vendors, or to people like me who have talked to those reference customers to get a feel for what people's experience actually is in practice. But beyond that, where the customers that I spoke to reported good experiences, it wasn't coincidence, it wasn't by luck, it was because there were structures in place, formal tools for measuring quality of the code, how well engineered it was, how whether there was duplication in it, whether it was going to be easy to maintain, prescriptive ways of doing that. In the culture of customer success, there were clear corporate values that were built into hiring and training, that when the service provider says they recruit the best people, we'll ask them how they do that, and look at the process, and you'll learn why it is that their clients consistently report good experiences. So it's a bit of both. Is just not the actual impact that you see, but drill into how they do it, look at the process, and things like that.
Great. So Mike, you were on the customer side and you had to, if you will, fight the cultural battle in shifting the mindset. So can you speak from your experience? How do you talk to your business colleagues? How do you talk to your executive leadership? How do you talk to vendor management in explaining, why and how to shift that perspective?
Yeah, it's not easy, right? It is probably a multi-tiered conversation, and is one that is built on success. I think it's important to start small, to take something and build success around that, and show that this type of model breeds a different outcome and probably breeds a different business result as well. And then be able to move that forward. But I've been challenged by the vendor management team before, and have had moments where I've had to go back and take a look at rates. I think the challenge I always have to them is, there are places where I can have commodity rates, and there are places I should not have commodity rates. If you trust me as a business leader, and if you trust me to manage the P&L of this segment well, then you will trust me to make the right decisions associated with that. I do think, though, you need to start with something and build upon it.
I have a question to Max. We live in unprecedented times. COVID-19 have, in a very short time, had already tremendous impact on business culture, business relationships, collaboration. And one of the things that it quickly forced people to do is work from home. And reconsider the very notion of sitting together, collaborating in the same room, using open spaces, and instead get people to work from home. Shifted in a very short period of time a lot of development to remote and offshore locations. And a question that we get a lot these days, literally several times a day: how can you do creative, innovative, collaborative work in this remote work from home or distant engineering teams that are global and work from essentially anywhere? Can you offer some perspective?
Sure. And like I said before, collaboration is possible without collocation. And in today's environment, there are plenty of tools that allow you to do this collaboration, both from communication perspective. Look at Slack, look at traditional email, look at Zoom, which we are using right now for the webinar. All these tools work and they can facilitate communication. There are plenty of tools that facilitate collaboration from project management perspective. And today, majority of the companies who are doing digital transformation and the companies who we are working with are using tools like Git or GitHub or GitLab or continuous delivery tooling. They're using cloud to deploy their software. So there is no real need to be physically in a certain place. And even security requirements, typically they can be overcome and certain procedures can be implemented. We have clients in financial sector who we are working right now from home. And that works for them, and it complies with their security processes based on how we designed our infrastructure. Obviously, work from home specifically, I would say, brings new challenges. People who have families or kids will have challenges working from home just because they will have distractions. Probably it will affect less software engineering because still most of the software engineers are relatively young, and that affects them less than maybe other industries, but it is still a challenge. But overall, I would say that if we are talking about these remote teams, and if we are talking about remote engineers, then there are all the best practices and all the processes and all the tools that exist today that can make it work. And we see proofs of that even before the situation with the COVID happened. We practiced distributed development before that, and and other companies practiced work from home before that as well.
Victoria, can I just answer quickly a couple of the questions that came through the chat feature?
Yes, please.
There's a question about the margins of service providers. This is an excuse for companies like you to get higher margins, and also question about how does we stop this becoming a blank check? Those are valid concerns, but there are clear methods for avoiding that. I mean, firstly, with Agile, you don't just sort of start on the journey without knowing where you're heading. You have to do a lot of work to define what you think the minimum viable product is going to look like and how much it's going to cost to get there. And then if during the development process, you see that actually you've underestimated that and it's going to be a lot further away, you may reconsider and abandon things. That's just a part of the cost of innovation. And yeah, hopefully your partner will make a decent margin from working with you. You want them to benefit. The point about margin is if you're a low margin, then you rely on volume, and the traditional waterfall often leads to, or the staff org model often leads to a lot of unnecessary work. There's no incentive to write better code that reuses objects and that sort of thing, because that doesn't increase your volume. So you ramp up the billable hours at low margin. Going for a slightly higher margin means there isn't that pressure to have just volume and effort of billable hours.
Great. Well, we are approaching the end of time. I want to thank Duncan, Max, and Mike, as well as our listeners. We are gonna publish the content of that webinar to be available on the website. And let's not stop the conversation. Please continue to send your questions and continue the dialogue. Thank you so much.